Hello, and welcome to the Write Club podcast, where we take you behind the pages and into the fascinating world of writing. I'm Beth, and this is Mary, and we're part of the team at Writing Magazine and Writers Online. Hi, Mary, how are you doing today?
I'm really well, thank you. Let me tell you all about this week's guest. Rahul Bhattacharya is a writer, journalist, and editor. His first novel, The Sly Company of People Who Care, won the Royal Society of Literature Ondaatje Prize and was shortlisted for the Man Asian Literary Prize. Pundits from Pakistan, his first book was a Wisden Cricketer top 10 cricket book of all time. He was born in Bombay and lives in Delhi with his wife and two daughters. His latest book, Rail Song, is out now.
Hi, Rahul. Welcome to the Write Club podcast.
Thank you so much, Mary and Beth, for having me. Really excited about our conversation.
Oh, it's brilliant to have you there. Are you in your usual writing space?
Yes, for the I should qualify this by saying that all of my books were written in different houses, different in different cities even, and the new one, Rail Song, was written across two houses. I mean, that's how long it took me. So, but the space I'm in now has been more or less my writing space for about 8 years now.
Oh, amazing. And would you be able to describe like your ideal sort of writing space for us?
Yeah, why not? So this began quite ambitiously as a proper study, a proper writer's studio. So it has a desk, it has tons of bookshelves and all of that. Uh, but it's just gradually evolved into a kind of family hangout area. Uh, as your introduction noted, we have two young daughters, so they're in here all the time. In front of me, I can see my older daughter's summer project work strewn all over the place. Their musical instruments were in here till yesterday, the tabla and the harmonium, and I moved them out from this room to the next one only so that all of us, Shruti and me and the kids, could sprawl out on the floor and watch the French Open on the desktop computer. So this is just to give you a sense of the kind of space it's become. What do I see around me? In front of me, I do actually have a really long window, but the curtains are drawn because of the blinding glare outside. We're lucky it's only 35 degrees today. It
Oh,
was 45 degrees just about 5 days ago. If I look above, I see this gaping huge wound on my ceiling. This is where it kind of collapsed during the monsoons last year, these kind of chunks of plaster. Luckily, nobody was on it, and miraculously, the computer survived this rather rude interruption. I see two pairs of pliers on my desk. That's
ah,
because a friend who was over the other day maneuvered himself kind of rather with great alacrity on this chair, and it just kind of broke. So yeah, so this is the this is currently my writing space.
oh, that's brilliant.
Sounds like a creative hub for everybody. I absolutely loved the book Rail Song. It's so beautifully written. Could you give us a brief overview of the story, please?
Thank you. This I find always is the hardest question. Uh, how to summarize your own book, and especially with fiction. So, but let me try with a little help from, the jacket copy and things like that. Um,
Absolutely.
so, Real Song is the story of uh, a woman making a life for herself on the railways of independent India. And so we follow her inhabit her life really from the time she's 3 till she's in the mid 30s, and that span of 3 decades also takes us through a kind of it serves as an immersion into this to Indian society in that period, because this is a person who's very much interested in the world around her. It's someone whose work is essentially dealing with people. So through her story and through the relationships in her story, we, I think, start to inhabit the greater space that she grew up in. It's a kind of forming of consciousness of an individual and how that interacts with that of the world around her.
That's interesting because that's a lot of the wording of my next question is very similar to that. I've said it's one of those rare novels about the relatively small life of one person, but also somehow about everything and everyone. And I particularly love this section where she says, She recalled what retired DYPCO Sinya had posited all those years ago, that every person on average harbored 5 to 7 grievances at any given point of time. So if you could understand the approximately 100 million grievances of all 17 lakh railway employees, from chairman to cinderwoman, why, you could understand the life of the entire country. And I wanted to ask you why it was that you wanted to write about the railway system.
Well, one reason is that there is nothing that so obviously serves as a metaphor for India as the Indian Railways. Uh, this, as many of your listeners must be aware, is a country of almost unimaginable diversity and human density. It's a country with about 800 living languages. It has uh, all, hundreds of ethnicities. Uh, it has almost all the major religions of the world, all kinds of cultures. How does a country like this, of 1.5 billion people, what are the symbols that keep it kind of connected with itself, really? Uh, what is it that happens in the space of a real journey where all of these things that I've described to you rub up against each other in the form of people? So, but this is just a very basic starting point. Anybody can access this metaphor. Uh, what is it that the novelist is trying to do? And and I felt that the meaningful thing I could do with this metaphor is to now start to think of the Indian Railways not as a mere infrastructural network, but a human network. How could I now access this human network? And one of the solutions that kind of suggested itself to me to to deploy the staff of the labor force that is the Indian Railways for this. This is one of the largest labor forces in the world, 1.8 million people at its peak. So if I can have a protagonist who is working with these lives, then that sets into motion something more definite to articulate the human network that I'm talking about. Uh, Charu, when she becomes Charu Chitol is the name of my protagonist, and she grows up in a railway colony. And once she becomes a railway employee herself, she works in the personnel department, which is working with people. And what they do in the personnel branch is basically deal with grievances. And grievances actually do take you very much to the heart of the person. There's a line in the book which says that grievances take you to the heart of the person, and the P branch is nothing but grievances, something to that effect. I'm not quoting it exactly right, but her work, especially as a field worker, takes her into very intimate spaces of workers' lives. An employee dies, 2, 3 wives come to claim the benefits. Children from different wives come up and make their claims. If you are going out to investigate that, you're deep inside their family and their personal lives. Through that, you enter their social world. Through that, you see the kind of social cleavages that surround that world. So it's through claims and grievances, I was able to access a huge experience of human life, a huge kind of range of human experience, maybe is a better way of putting it. So, well, that's why grievances, that's why the personal branch, and that's why the Indian Railways.
That's a fascinating response. And where did the character of Charu, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, come from? And why did you choose a female protagonist?
Luckily, I didn't embark on this novel as the project of a male writer writing a female character. I think that would have probably, you know, undue pressure on me would have made that would have been too self-conscious, perhaps, a way of approaching uh, a novel which really tries to excavate the life. What happened was I had the sort of first glimmerings of this novel in my head, which were more in the form of a thought experiment, really, were to do with the idea of an ordinary character interacting with a vast system, a system an enterprise like the Indian Railways or the Indian Census, which really gestures at the scale and complexity of the country. So I was interested as a novelist in seeing how this interaction works out between these two things, a mere individual and a vast system like that. Uh, but I didn't have that character. So then I set about trying to discover the character, and so it was instinctively that when I sat down on the page, she appeared as a girl, as a young girl, as part of this young family who's moving to the railway township, and uh, and then, as happens with novels, you just build on one thing to the other, and you just want to discover as much as you can about the character for yourself. And that process of discovery actually then became the novel.
She's a great character. She's so modern and curious. And like you said, she just wants to know about people and know about life. And I thought she was a absolutely brilliant character.
Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you wrote a beautiful article for Writing Magazine, which we've received lots of letters about already, all about your decision to handwrite the first draft of your novel, which hats off to you. That's my hands would be like in agony. Could you explain the process and the decision behind this?
Right. So, I mean, the shortest and the most straightforward answer is that I simply couldn't concentrate. And I was watching a clip from here, I think it is, with Ian McEwan. And I'm pleased to say this is something he agrees with, because I think he's talking about difference between being a writer in the 1970s and now. And he says it was much easier back then because we didn't have the internet. So you could roam around in the garden of your mind. And, and this exactly is what I found, that I couldn't roam around in the garden of my mind because I was on a device and the device was connected all the time. And it's like if your mind is paradoxical as it may sound, if your mind is always chasing something, chasing another thought, uh, it is paradoxically paralyzed at the same time. It's always moving and it can't stay still. And that stillness, but that motion is actually not productive motion. The stillness that you need for novel writing to descend into fiction is the opposite of paralysis. It is a stillness which really, uh, whose movements are kind of so fine and so subtle, and the kind of relationship that you need with your own self while creating a fiction uh, has to be almost unmediated. And every device that we have in front of us is a kind of form of mediation, which is really, I found, not helpful. So, and at the same time, the really enabling thing was me reading an interview with Toni Morrison. I think maybe this was the Paris Review interview, in which she says that she woke up before dawn every morning and she would sit to work as the morning light came in, and her tools were 2B pencils and yellow legal pads. Uh, she had she had a child, she had a job, um, so all of this made a lot of sense to me. Um, we just had our first child. I had a day job, uh, and I thought if 2B pencils and yellow legal pads are good enough for Toni Morrison, that's exactly what I did. And it took me a while, but I could get from one thing to the next, one thing to the next. And all writers know that first drafts are usually awful. And even though I must have written an awful draft, I finished it. I was able to see through something that I could not just get started on.
So it's almost taking those distractions away and giving yourself the time and the space, even if it wasn't a lot of time, perhaps.
That's exactly it. And I think, it's also connected with working at that hour of the day, that morning hour, when you're kind of quite close to your unconscious or subconscious mind, and you're able to access things which are very hard to access in the glare of day. and with the doorbell ringing and people coming into your room all the time, and it's
Mm.
yeah.
Definitely. Is it something that
Wow.
you're going to continue to do, do you think?
I wish I had the logistical imagination to take it to the next level. Having done a first draft, I see that Jennifer Egan, I've read, she seems to write her first draft, then she types it up, and I think, if I remember correctly, then she prints them out and works by hand all over again. Uh, so I want to see whether something like that is possible or not. I can see its value, and especially in the drafting stage now. Uh, just to work on something which is not connected, which is not a device, and which holds everything in your life, basically,
Mm.
uh, which is what our computers and phones do. They're awful things.
Yeah,
Mm.
it sounds very appealing. And like I said, we've had lots of responses to
What
the
do they say in
article.
responses? I'm so curious.
I will send them to you. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they're just very, people are very inspired to try it. And I think we're all desperate to be away from our devices, aren't we? So the idea of going back to pen and paper seems to be very appealing.
Pencil. I would say the pencil is actually quite important because it gives you the sharpening of the pencil. I find is a very calming activity, and
Yeah.
it also lets you kind of measure your progress. It kind of whittles down, and there's something metaphoric going on with sharpening the tip, with the kind of finessing and the focus that you bring to words. So yeah, I'm sure pen works just fine, and it has worked. I mean, feathers and ink has worked fine for generations of great writers. But I do like the pencil and sharpener.
Am I right
Mm.
in thinking that you kept all your little pencils? Have they got to the
No,
stub?
I thought I had, but they all disappeared because when my daughters were sort of young enough for those little stubs to be of good size for them, I think they kind of started using them all, and I can see like literally one or two of them. Otherwise, I had a pencil box full of those
Oh,
stubs. Yeah. I still have the notebooks, of course. I mean, the legal pads.
yeah.
Mm.
That's such a great idea. And I think as well it takes that the thinking pressure away a little bit, I feel, because I know for me when I'm writing something, especially on my computer, you're so quick to press that like backspace button all the time and just delete and restart, make it perfect first time. Whereas I feel like when you're writing, obviously you don't have that option to just delete, restart, and overthink your words so much. So I feel like that'd be a really good exercise to almost relax into the writing a little bit and just write for the sake of writing. And then, like you say, it's just first draft. So then you can really worry about the words that you've used, whether making sure everything's flowing properly. And yeah, I feel like it's something that everybody needs to do a little bit more frequently. And like I say, moving away from the computer, moving away from the distractions, and just having your pen or your pencil and your paper in front of you. So yeah, I really like that idea. I feel like it just feels a bit freeing.
I think that's the word,
No,
isn't
that's absolutely right. Just to be able to move to the next thing and not get obsessed with your words. The other thing that you kind of end up doing on the computer a lot is just Googling anything that you don't know at that very moment. That I must now learn all of this at this very second. But that's not what makes fiction.
Could you tell us a little bit about your writing career and your route to publication?
Plain fact is, I had no ambition of becoming a writer, let alone a published author. Uh, I was I was a struggling pure mathematician who fled as fast as he could into cricket and journalism. I started working at 20, just maybe a couple of days after my final exam as a Bachelor of Science in Pure Mathematics. Uh, and journalism kind of really opened up the world to me. I started out as a cricket writer, and that gave me my first book, which is Pundits from Pakistan, which is a kind of historically loaded tour account of India visiting its so-called enemy country, Pakistan. That became my first book. I mean, but during my travels as a cricket correspondent, I got the chance to cover the West Indies, and that gave me the location for what became my second book because I was so taken with Guyana in the Caribbean, that I decided I want to go back and spend some time here, and that became my first novel, The Sly Company of People Who Care. And so these books were published when I was relatively young. Pandits was published when I was 25, and Sly Company, I think, about 31. And so by then, I was basically a writer. I could call, there was nothing to do but call myself a writer because that's what I was doing. I'd written 2 books. I was doing a fair amount of journalism as well. Um, but it's only now, after Real Song, that I feel confident about calling myself a novelist as opposed to just a writer, because I feel that uh, if you've just written the one novel, and there are people who've written just the one great novel even, but still, to identify yourself as something suggests that you're doing it more often. Uh, that said, it has been the gap between the second and the third book, between the 2 novels, has been 14 or 15 years. So that's I should use that word with some qualification as well.
And what does a typical working day look like for you? Are you writing every day now?
No, I'm not. Because I'm not sure whether I always wrote every day. If I had a project on the go, if I had a book on the go, or if I was working on pieces of that kind, then yes, of course. But between books, it, it usually takes me a little time to sink into something. This is something I want to learn from, and for other writers uh, out there, kind of for aspiring writers, is that projects don't always sort of just kind of come to you. You have to, especially with fiction, you have to kind of make yourself do it. You have to scratch your way into these projects, and because the subjects of my first and the second book had come to me relatively easily, and I was kind of quite sure this is what I wanted to do, and I just kind of did it. Uh, I just thought that would happen with my third book, but I had to. Uh, it took me a while to realize that no, I have to kind of fight my way into it. Especially if it is an ambitious project as Rail Song was. Uh, but your question was really about my routine. Do I write every day? And when I write, when I was younger, I would write much more. I was an evening and night guy. I would do. Those are the 2 quietest times of the day, right? Yeah, you either are a morning writer or a night writer. Uh, at least in India, where it's kind of really chaotic and noisy through the day. And if you don't have the luxury of somebody managing everything else for you, then you have to kind of make time for yourself at either end of the day. I used to write to a lot of music when I was younger as well. Late into the night, I would have music always to keep me company. I used to write on the computer. All of these things were totally overturned by my process for Railsong, because maybe all of these things, in a way, kind of were distractions. It was, of course, it is the internet and all the things that we've talked about, but these two, all the other sources of stimulation, also kind of feed in to a mind that is maybe a little too wired to kind of descend into fiction. So morning is when I wrote Real Song, the first draft by hand, and this is something I mentioned in the Writing magazine piece. Interestingly, once I finished that first draft by hand, we were traveling up in the mountains, and I had this slightly dramatic seizure with a kind of tapeworm infestation, which got into my brain, larvae, and I may have, and that kind of made me fall backwards onto a road off a plinth, and kind of my head was cut open, and I was like taken in the middle of nowhere to a little pharmacy where somebody stitched me up. I have no memory of all of this.
Oh my
Because,
God.
yeah, those 20, 30 minutes are kind of completely wiped out from my memory. But anyway, when I came back to Delhi and we saw the neurologist, he said this would resolve eventually, but you have to be mindful about getting enough night's sleep and things like that. And so that very ambitious early morning start, I put it off. I put it on hold for a while, And then we also had a second child. We moved houses, and it just became too very busy for me to maintain the kind of the ideal writing life that I had tried to set up for myself with the first draft of Real Song. And then became a question of just kind of finding the time, and then you manage it in your day. But now, having done this book and kind of mostly come to the end of my publicity run, I'm trying to claw back into that morning routine. Uh, there always, as all writers know, there's always ways the world will conspire against you sitting at the desk at your time of choosing, but uh, I feel one has to fight for it.
Yeah, that's why we always ask the question, because writers always want to know how they can have this time, and you just have to make it, don't you? Because life gets in the way otherwise.
It's always easier to do something else than to write. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
There's
yeah.
a million other things that you could be doing, like washing your hair or hanging your clothes out or doing the dishes. There's just a million other things that can get in the way if you let it. But like you say, you've just got to force yourself to do it. You might not feel like it, but the second you sit down and you start like getting into that mode where the words are just spilling out of you, that's why you do it,
I
isn't
used to
it?
actually find that kind of, you know, the time of procrastination, the time kind of where you easing yourself into the writing space. I used to find that quite useful. Uh, but as you grow up and responsibilities mount, you just don't have that luxury.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know you mentioned that you had a career as a journalist and also editing. How has that work helped with your novel writing, and which hat do you prefer to wear?
Out of the journalist and editor and the novelist.
Mm,
So I was, for about 10 years, I was editing this long form cricket magazine called the Cricket Monthly. It's an ESPN Cricket Info magazine. And at that time, when I started doing it, I felt, wow, what a relief to be sorting out other people's problems. Uh, but then when you do it for long enough and you have these really, really kind of messy or underdone 10,000 word articles coming in, and uh, by the time you're done with it, you start thinking, you think about all the energy that you could have spent on your own writing. I mean, eventually, I started thinking that way. I always did like editing. I think it's a process I value very much. I value a good editor very much for my own work, and they are hard to find. But having done quite a lot of that, uh, I feel that one of the things that is underrated about editing is also that you want to do it well, how long it takes. Uh, so, given those two, given that we've just talked about trade-offs and how you want to use your time now, and I would much rather wear my writer's hat. Uh, Journalism has taught me a great deal, I think, especially maybe writing under deadline, writing sport. Uh, it teaches you to kind of it teaches you several things. It taught me how to kind of rise to the occasion sometimes. It taught you how to. It teaches you a lot about sport, writing sport, especially. It teaches you a lot about pacing. I think that's a very crucial lesson that you can take into fiction writing. It teaches you a lot about how to create mood and how to kind of render people so that they come alive on the page. Uh, Outside sport, going into other kind of fields of journalism, I found that one's curiosity on the field as a journalist really kind of pays off in the world of novel writing as well. Uh, there are sometimes novels that one encounters where you just feel this writer does not really have a sense of the ground. It's a little too disconnected, it's a little too airy fairy. And even fiction, if it needs to have a certain power, it needs to kind of really understand the world around it. And so there's that. I think journalism has helped me in that as well. I mean, that said, it's just like one of so many routes. There are people who become successful novelists from having never have had to step out onto the field. They
Mm,
might come out of their reading of poetry or philosophy or whatever it is. Uh,
yeah.
me operating as an English language writer in a country as complex as India, uh, something about being out there on the ground, on the field, is always something that I can take into my fictional worlds. The understanding of the real world, I mean, in quotes, real world.
Yeah, absolutely. And it actually, like when you, as you explain that, it just makes so much sense. Like that stepping stone from being a journalist to writing your own novel, it just seems like it makes sense, like a natural progression. And like you say, being able to have that real world experience and potentially, I mean, not that sports boring, but being able to turn something that could potentially not necessarily be a story into a story by the way that you explain it and the way that you write it, and like you say, bringing those characters to life is a real skill. And being able to turn that into a novel then is is really useful kind of backstory to have. Um, so yeah, that's really interesting. I've never thought about it like that either.
Be a good writing experiment, wouldn't it? A good writing exercise to take like maybe a sports game and write about it and get all the pacing and action and everything in. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And is there another book in the pipeline that you can tell us about?
I fear there may be, but equally I fear there may not be, and which is why I can tell you absolutely nothing about it. But I had committed to and had started waking up at that slightly unearthly hour to start scratching into something, and then life interrupted in the form of we had to get a lot of long pending civil work done in the house to prevent exactly the kind of ceiling collapse that I spoke about at the start of our conversation. And then I got kind of overtaken by that, but I'm going to try and groove back into whatever it is that I was trying to do. Sorry to sound so mysterious about it.
We're intrigued now.
But
Well,
that's helpful. Thank you.
well, whatever it is, as long as you keep us updated with any progressions, you'll have to let us know what's next for you
Yeah.
when you figure it out.
Unfortunately, as you know, I can't email you because they're not on the computer. They're, in, they're pencil marks on paper.
Oh, brilliant. And we always like to end the Right Club with a book recommendation for our listeners. Is there something that you've read recently that you'd like to recommend for us?
So I want to recommend the book that I'm currently reading, but is it a cheat to kind of just recommend an out and out classic?
No.
No, absolutely not.
It's not?
I mean, if you want to recommend one of your own books as well, that's absolutely fine.
No, I mean, that's not how narcissistic I am. I was going to, uh, but I'm going to recommend a classic, but however, one I suspect has not been read as much in the English. I mean, everybody in the kind of literary Anglosphere probably has heard of this book, but I'm not sure so many people have read it. And this is Don Quixote by Cervantes, and which is, of course, one of the great and one of the founding novels. Uh, and I'm only reading it now. This is the Burton Raphael translation. Uh, I've heard the Edel Grossman translation is excellent. This is the copy that they had in my library. It's a Norton Critical Edition, and it is so funny and it's so great. And it reminds me of one of my other favorite novels, which is Gogol's Dead Souls, which is one of among the Russian classics. I feel it's one of the kind of underrated Russian classics. Nikolai Gogol's Dead Souls. I feel he owes reading Don Quixote now. I feel that Gogol probably owes some debts to Cervantes, but then again, this is possibly true of every literary novelist almost who's come after Cervantes because of that's how kind of important Don Quixote is meant to be to modern novels. I'm enjoying it thoroughly.
Hmm.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, it's yet another book that I feel I must read but haven't yet.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's only 746 in very fine print. I'm sure if they have to do a generous typesetting, this would be about 1,000 pages. So,
Oh,
um,
wow.
I won't
yeah.
beat myself up too much then.
Only a short one then, is it?
Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been such a lovely chat.
Thank you so much, Mary and Beth. It was a real pleasure.
Oh, it's lovely to have you on, and we've been given lots of different tips and inspiration from you. So, I'm sure our listeners will have taken a lot away from that conversation. So, thank you again.
My pleasure entirely. Thank you very much. And best wishes to your podcast, to your magazine, and to the both of you.
Thank
Oh, thanks
you.
so much. Thanks for tuning into the Write Club. We hope you enjoyed this episode and feel inspired to keep writing. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at Writers Online, your go-to for writing tips, competitions, and exclusive updates. Plus, you'll never miss an episode of the Write Club. Until next time, happy writing.